Hello, everybody. How's it going? This is Foucault Meeting number 8, last discussion of our smiling bald man. He is happy, isn't he? I wanted to start off today. Let me hit share on the screen here. Foucault terms. With a reminder to everybody. In our discussion of curiosity, it's very important that we keep a focus on what Foucault says. And not because we're becoming some sort of Foucauldian dogmatists, as though what he said is necessarily the truth, but in body one of your paper, and also in just considering Foucault, whether you're writing the paper or not, keep in mind that what he says is let it be what he's brought to the table. He would let what you say in body 3 be what you say. And that's what you want to do here. Curiosity is a very interesting topic, and it'd be great to talk about it as the desire to know, and especially how that gets changed and directed throughout our lives to different foci and whatnot. But that just isn't what it is for Michel Foucault. He's made it into something different, something problematized, something where it really invites us into the arena of thought that we'll talk about today. Strongly connected with Arendt. He saw his ideas very connected to hers. She just personally didn't like the man. Doesn't matter, it's neither here nor there, but that's the case. So when you're writing, be very careful. Be careful with Foucault's words. He's smiling and happy. Let what he has brought to the table be what he brought to the table. Don't commit a fallacy of equivocation. If he's used a term in a specific way, let it be used in his way in your body 1. You can do whatever the heck you want in your body 3 or in your own argument, but let him do his thing, just like he'd give you the freedom to do yours. That said, let me go down here just a little bit and revisit. Control N. There we go. Page up. Go. Wanted to revisit the definitions of curiosity. These are merely quotes. Quotes from page 46. So I just wanted to remind you, you can only use one on the quiz, and you can only use one in the paper. They can be the same one, okay? And I mean, this is not a lot to consider. The reason why I don't want you going into more than one strategy, power relation, right, okay, is because I want you to take the time to be able to dive in and let this definition of curiosity be a problem that you dive into and look at from all the different sides. Those could very well be sides that Foucault himself did not think of, and seeing connections to other concepts that he didn't see it as connecting to. Great. That's all he would have wanted. And that's an awesome direction. We talked a little bit about the tasks of philosophy. I'm going to come back to that in 1 second. If you look at page 44, something he said, and what I think these definitions of curiosity connect with. If we have, that limited standard desire to know and know correctly, okay, well, there's nothing wrong with that. That is one among many. It just isn't one of Foucault's. And where he sees that as being a little bit limiting is how that can set up a polemic. A polemic is a very critical, I have that as well. Well, I can't go to the sharing it. Well, let me see, I can just move it over here. Oh, I know what I can do. 1 second. There we go. I'm just going to put something right here just so that you can see it. Okay. A polemic is a strong verbal or written attack on someone. It's totally fine. It's just a dictionary definition. And look at these, well, very telling cartoons. Okay, these are people who are barking at each other and shouting. This is maybe a relation of confrontation, but it certainly isn't a power relation. It isn't based on each side recognizing and practicing their freedom and recognizing the freedom of the other. It isn't engaged in the possibility of opening up completely new possibilities that neither side had thought of. It's designed to shut one or the other down. And that's why Foucault was so bothered by it. If we look back on page 44, he says, if I've chosen anonymity, it is not to criticize this or that individual. It's like, I chose anonymity. Other people can be interviewed, whatever. That's fine. It's up to them. I wanted to do it this way. Different strokes for different folks, right? Isn't that the same? And that's what he was going for. And if we look over at 46 as well, you know, when the interlocutor says, let's risk a few concrete propositions. If everything is going badly, where do we make a start? He's like, everything isn't going badly. We just have problems. Each day has its own problems. I apologize for not having the exact citation, but I believe it's in Proverbs. Every day has its own trouble. Well, there's something remarkably factual. I can't deal with Tuesday's situations today. My sister-in-law was in surgery for 7.5 hours yesterday. She's not in surgery for 7.5 hours today. New issue today. Okay, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. I'm recording this on Wednesday. It wouldn't make much sense to cook turkey today if I'm going to make another one tomorrow. Every day has its own trouble. Look at the problem for that day. Problem doesn't have to be a bad word. I know we're raised with that little saying too. Oh, I don't see problems. I see opportunities. Foucault would say, yeah, well, I see problems and opportunities as interchangeable terms. It's another chance to hear a different perspective, to look at it from a different side, to see what somebody else would do. And then look at that in terms of problematization, which is what our focus is going to be today. Anyway, he says, everything isn't going badly. In any case, I believe we shouldn't confuse useful criticism of things with repetitive jeremiads against people. I like the word of the day, jeremiad. Pointless, whingy. Sorry to go a little British there, but whining on about something. Oh, everything's going badly. Oh, the culture's going into the dumper. Everything's bad. This is negative. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Well, if everything is, if you're being critical of something, like, oh my God, everything is going bad. You know, this is negative or that is negative. Whatever it is that you're complaining against, and this has to do with OA4. Those comments are coming back. You know, if we're being critical, say, of culture, or we're being critical of certain directions and whatnot, it's because there was something positive that it was supposed to be doing, and that it's not. And so that's why we're having an issue. So that's why the tasks of philosophy aren't to, let me take this out, Alt. There we go. The tasks of philosophy aren't knowing and knowing truly for Foucault. It's all about engaging. It has to do with this very active examination on your side, respecting that the other person hopefully is doing that as well, and encouraging them to do so, and realizing that there's going to be others coming into the power relation all the time, good things, okay? And that's exactly what's going on. Interrogating myself, that can be a philosophy task. Reflecting on my relationship to truth. Those are super important. It isn't just about the truth. What's the relationship I'm being asked to have to this particular truth? What other relationships to that truth have been suggested? Okay? And doing this activity of curiosity, if I go back up, this is it. Well, we have always looked at knowledge as the most important. Well, that's a traditional hierarchy. Let's see if that's really going to hold. Okay, or let's see if that's just one view among many. I don't know unless I take a look. It's practicing refusal, going back once again to that idea that I'm saying no, not to what was presented, but to the self-evident claim about what is presented. See, this is obviously the truth. Well, let me take a look. That's it. Awesome. All right. So, itchy nose. I'm going to go into the text. I wanted to talk to you about that as well. You'll notice that with our first three philosophers, we stayed very, very close to the course pack questions. And in our discussion of Foucault, what I've been doing is mostly staying in the reading. The questions go along in order in the reading. They don't really jump around at all. Coffee. But this was a particular strategy that I wanted to see with, and I'll see this in the questions that I get as you're writing the position papers and how things are coming out in your interpretation. Is it better to go along with the reading and let the reading questions in the course pack be a little bit more you're filling in, or is that the better style? Any feedback, always welcome. But I just wanted to try a couple of different things so that I know how different approaches work. All right, hope all is well. Okay, diving in. Sorry, our reading for today. On page 48, this was a discussion that happened roughly a month before Foucault's death in June of 1984. Paul Ravenel is a Foucauldian scholar, and he was a colleague of Foucault's at UC Berkeley. Foucault, sorry, I was thinking about Ricoeur for a second. Well, Foucault was a guest lecturer there for a couple of years. And so it's more interview style, but they were discussion partners. All right, awesome. So it says, I like what he says. Why is it that you don't engage in polemics? Okay, why is it that you don't try to shut down the other side and get everybody to be Foucauldian? And his answer is perfect. It's perfectly Foucauldian, because he says, I like discussions. When I'm asked questions, I try to answer them. But that's the first part. I like discussions. Discussions, a legitimate discussion, is a good power relation. It lets the other person bring what he or she wants to the table and is actively considering not only what I'm going to bring to the table, but what my response might be to that. And seeing if this opens up new directions for investigation or maybe even ideas that we had never thought of. With that in mind, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Allergies. With that in mind, he goes into morality as we tend to get to thinking about morality as kind of something really empty and negative. But let's not forget that 3 out of the 4 aspects of ethics are talking about moral practice and moral engagement in my life and living and choosing and acting as a moral subject. Okay? With all that in mind, morality should be thought about. That gets us into ethics, a considered form that freedom takes when it's informed by reflection and the practice of freedom. I should do the activity of curiosity on what's being presented. But when I come back into the power relation and bring my stuff to the table, we're back to morality, the back and forth. So it's here, it says, I insist on this difference. He talks about how he's not going to do things as a polemic. He says, I insist on this difference as something essential. A whole morality is at stake, the one that concerns the search for truth in the relation to the other. And he'll keep going through those ideas, throughout our reading today. Okay, that second full paragraph of his answer is really going into his position, and then he goes into why he doesn't want to be a polemicist. So he says it's great. He says, in the serious play of questions and answers, in the work of reciprocal elucidation, the rights of each person are in some sense immanent in the discussion. Okay, they depend only on the dialogue situation. Why I want to point that out is This is why care is required. Remember, care of the self. It's knowledge of myself. Yeah, I got to know how I react to things and where my weaknesses and strengths are. But I also have to know knowledge of the truths, rules, and prescriptions of acceptable conduct, and how to operate in the game of truth that's in this back and forth. How to push the envelope a little bit, maybe, or how to pull back, or how to shape and direct the attentions of the interlocutor in my power relation in a particular way. I'm being careful because I want to foster its growth, but I'm exercising care because this is fragile. I could hurt this. I could crush the other with this polemical attitude, and that's not going to open up more possibilities. So that's where that is. I like that. Anyway, look at the rest of that paragraph, and it's an important connection back to our very first reading. We're going to come full circle today. He says, the person asking the questions is merely exercising the right that has been given to him to remain unconvinced, to perceive a contradiction, to require more information, to emphasize different postulates, to point out faulty reasoning, so on. Okay? As for the person answering the questions, he too exercises a right that does not go beyond the discussion itself. By the logic of his own discourse, he is tied to what he has said earlier, and by the acceptance of dialogue, he is tied to the questioning of the other. Okay? So, as a subject in a power relation, let's remember the definition of the, not definition, that's not correct, the two meanings of subject. Tied to another through control and or dependence, but tied to myself in a particular game of truth, he says. I mean, where he does go into subject, I'm tied to my identity and conscience and the truths about myself. If I put this out there in a discussion, the other person is correct to hold me to it. You put this out there, you said that. Well, you're calling that up. Yeah, all right. Well, that's fine. You can call that up. Okay? But what I wanted to draw out there is consider back to pages 7 through 9, where the power relation was being looked at as fairly cantankerous, right? And we were talking about it as a relation of confrontation. We had intransigence and obstinacy. Okay, intransigence was I'm not moving from this position, and obstinacy is I'm not either. But that could still be, now we're seeing, a useful discussion. Why can't people, two people with different views, still hold those views and interact in a good conversation with each other? That should be the whole point. It shouldn't be that those cartoons from the polemics definition graphic that I brought up are just yelling back and forth and fighting it out. Why not bring it together and discuss? Recognizing, of course, there could be a third, fourth, 29th, 65th different view on this problem, and that we benefit from more understanding and more dialogue, not less. All right, I like that. Intransigence. A power relation is not about reducing the two parties involved to some squishy middle position. Maybe there's a midpoint that's reached, maybe a new idea. But it's not about them losing their individual quality. All right. I like this. He says questions and answers depend on a game that is at once pleasant and difficult, in which each of the two partners takes pains to use only the rights given to him by the other and by the accepted form of dialogue. Don't overstep. The goal would be, in a good power relation, that each is careful with what's brought in. The polemicist. Let's go into the problem here. And why I think that this really connects is if you think about the elders, the oldsters, as Adalbert refers to them in Machete Season, it could very likely have been that they would not have listened to Adalbert if he said, oh, you old fogies, y'all are saying nasty things about our neighbors, but look, they came here for that help out. Hey, he brought the beer. This is a good neighbor. You know, they might not have listened. They might have said, no, and all the negative things about the Tutsis, that their hatred had roused. And yet it would have stopped there. Yeah, your oldsters and your grousing, and the next generation's going to do better, and good for them. So, all right. But he says the polemicist proceeds encased in privileges that he possesses in advance and will never agree to question. That's the problem. If I say, well, I know this, and so there's no questioning that, boom, I'm in a bad space. Foucault would say, why aren't you questioning it? Remember refusal. To not accept as self-evident what is presented in a power relation, whatever is brought to the table by the other. I could say, this is super obvious and the only way that it can be. And you could say, let me think about it. It's totally fine. All right, great. But that's the problem. It shuts down. He says, the person he confronts is not a partner in search for the truth, but an adversary, an enemy who is wrong, who is harmful. Sorry, by the way, I have a typo down there. Harmful, and whose very existence constitutes a threat. If you remember back, really it's mostly on pages 8 to 9, it talks about a relation of confrontation, which at the very extreme edges of power relations could be looked at, could be seen a relation of confrontation, but it's very much slipping off the edge. Okay, it's still, as long as I'm going to let you speak, that's still kind of sort of a power relation, but it's not a great one. And more and worse, it's edging towards a polemicist is creating a state of domination, but in two ways. If I'm a polemicist, if I'm engaging in polemics, I'm not questioning on my side. I'm not really practicing my freedom. And I'm not interested in opening up any more possibilities. I want the power relation to be frozen one way, where you say what I say, not what you think. And I can't remove your freedom. The problem in a polemicist, the problem with a polemicist creating a state of domination is not because that really removes the freedom of the other. Truthfully, I can't remove your freedom. Don't eat turkey tomorrow. I have spoken. What? That's stupid. Okay, I can't. You'd be like, you, Professor Waterstraw telling me what I can eat. Stop drinking coffee. Like I would ever say that. All right? I can't do anything to your freedom. I don't think I can. Yeah, I can take away your freedom by magic. No, not really. I mean, he comes up with a magic wand in a little bit. Foucault can't take away your freedom. And even somebody who's, barfingly polemic about their approaches can't take away your freedom either. All they can do is put their case out there and shoot themselves in the foot by not practicing any sort of questioning with regard to it. Look, he talks about religious and judicial and political. We all have our own positions. I've been open about that. I'm Lutheran, okay? But I always thought it was very interesting, and now you'll know where those 4 magic words come from. Luther, whenever he was looking at something, and he wrote our catechism, said, well, here's something. What does this mean? Not repeat after me, I am Luther, all hail Luther or something. That would be funny. He'd be like, bring the beer, Sorry, we're very open people. But what does this mean? And really what he was saying is, here's what I've thought about. Anyone else? Others? Anyone? Bueller? And was looking for the answer as well. That's probably the oddest couple in history. I just paired Luther and Foucault. What a riot. Okay, anyway, practice your freedom with regard to those deeply held beliefs. Not so that you lose them, but so that you know why you hold them. That's the most important. Otherwise, somebody comes along with a shiny and slick argument, and well, geez, I never really thought about my position, and goes away. and because you never really practiced your freedom with regard to it. All right. Moving on then. I'm on page 49, and it's that first full paragraph on 49. He says, perhaps someday a long history will have to be written of polemics. Polemics as a parasitic figure on discussion and an obstacle to the search for the truth. What fun! Actually, that would be pretty fun. It's like how people, here's a history of how people thought they were right all the time. A history of opinionated jerks by an opinionated jerk. No, I'm kidding. That was referring to me. Sorry. But that's where that would be kind of interesting. It's like, look at how some have opened up the discussion, the history of problematization. That's what he was wanting to do, even though he didn't live long enough to do it. And there's a parallel history of how things were shut down. Oh, well, we can't ask that question. Why not? I just did. Notice that whenever somebody says, well, you can't really ask that question, it's after you just did. So clearly you can. Why shouldn't you? What is that opening up? Is that a bad direction? Why is that a bad direction? That's about practicing your freedom even more. Lots of fun. All right. He goes into the examples from religion and judicial and political polemics and partisanship. And I think we can all really identify with the end of that paragraph. And I'm sorry, I don't talk very politically, but I would just encourage this. Why are we so cantankerous in being one side or the other? Aren't we all LME lions? Let's all chit chat. What fun. All right, so that's just me. I'm tired of people barking on the news. I don't have TV, and I'm up at my parents', and there's a lot of news watching. Oh, well, we got to know what's going on. What's the new candidate? Who's doing this? Oh, is this good or is this not? I don't care. Tell me later. I don't want to hear about it for 7 hours. Sorry, I'll stop whining myself. All right, so moving right along. I think it's great. I love his criticism here because this is so perfect. Look at a little bit more than halfway down at the end, beginning of that second full paragraph. Of course, the reactivation and polemics of these political, judiciary, or religious practices is nothing more than theater. It's play acting. It's not real. One gesticulates, anathemas, excommunications, condemnations, battles, victories, defeats are no more than ways of speaking, after all. And yet, in the order of discourse, there are also ways of acting which are not without consequence. There are the sterilizing effects. Has anyone ever seen a new idea come out of a polemic? If I'm waging a battle in this discussion, the objective is obviously to crush the other side. How can a new idea come out of that? It would just be mine overall, my idea. But my idea is just my idea. I have no idea its limitations. That was that quote that I brought up a little while ago from Aldous Huxley. The words we use say so much about our character and the way our thinking is going and moving. And I think that that's really important here in Foucault. He wants to be away from these words. If I'm going to be careful with the power relation, maybe I want to push it a little bit at times. A lack of respect for traditional hierarchies isn't a disrespect, but it's taking it down off that pedestal. So maybe that bothers somebody. If I say, well, I'm a Lutheran. That is one Christian sect among many, and Christianity is one religion among many. Well, do you know if it's the right one? Well, let's take it down and take a look. The right one for me is why I'm Lutheran. Okay, but you could be a Baptist or a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Jewish person or whatever. You can be agnostic, atheistic, whatever. One of my best friends from LMU. We've known each other now, too many years. It's embarrassing. We're coming up on 28 years. And she's driving up to Walnut Creek. Might even see her later, and that would be great. But yeah, she's pagan, literally. She and her husband are co-presidents of Pagan Pride Los Angeles. So, yeah, there's different views. And why can't we discuss them? That's all Foucault's opening up. I hope. Okay, but I like this. Okay, so what I said, that there are the sterilizing effects. Consider the impact on power relations of having a polemical attitude when you come into one. You're not desiring to open up more communication. You're desiring to shut it down. My way, I wouldn't say my way or the highway, it's my way. And that's the problem. All right, look at the bottom of 49. Here's the magic wand. Let us imagine for a moment that a magic wand is waved, and one of the two adversaries in a polemic is given the ability to exercise all the power he likes over the other, not just over the field of possibilities between them, but I can go, poof, now you have my opinions. That would be awful. He gives an example from the former Soviet Union, but I mean that's it. I mean, if you spoke out against Hitler, that was a fascistic regime, and if you spoke out against Stalin, that was a totalitarian dictatorship, totalitarian regime. If you did, you disappeared. We speak very freely in our country, and that's a blessing. I could say, you know, I don't take political positions, not with you guys, except, again, Prop 7. No more daylight savings time. Screw changing the clocks. And we already voted on that and it passed. And yay, Uber and Lyft for Prop 22. But, I mean, if I were to say, I hate this or that political figure, I think he or she's absolutely terrible. I think this is awful stuff. They're terrible. They probably raised their kids bad. They're mean-spirited. They probably, lick their fingers before they shake somebody's hand. In the time of COVID, I can say whatever I want. Nothing will happen to me. People will think I'm weird or irritating, but beyond that, no one disappears. You spoke out against Stalin, welcome to the gulag. And that was it. We're thankful this Christmas. Sorry. We'll be thankful Christmas too. We're thankful this Thanksgiving that we can say what we want. All right. Nice. Going down a little bit on that page, I put a big smiley face. This is the thing. Ravenel is asking him, remember the question back on page 13 that Michael Bass asked? Well, are you a Marxist? And he's like, I don't know what you mean. He's been called a Marxist, an anti-Marxist, a leftist, a conservative, a liberal, an anti-liberal. He doesn't fit in any category. I had used the reference before as he's a water weenie. It was a toy that, it's kind of like what used to be called a finger trap, where, it was wicker and you put your fingers in there and when you pulled them apart, it got stuck. Okay, so the key was to go opposite to what you wanted to do. Anyway, a water weenie is kind of like that, except it's a balloon shaped like that, filled with water. And if you wanted to hold on to it, you had to hold it really lightly. If you squeeze it, it went flip. Oh, that's funny. Flip. And so it's really funny for a toddler or whatever. It's not obviously, a grown-up toy. But if you're like, oh, I figured out what position you have, Foucault, flip, he's in the other direction. He's not trying to be cantankerous. He's trying to be Michel Foucault. He's who he wants to be. If you want to put a label on it, he doesn't know what you mean by the label. So he's like, I must admit that I rather like what they mean. I have been convinced that their inability to situate me has something to do with me. The fact that I don't want to take solely one position. I want to be open to these ideas. And that's what he says, near the bottom of 50. I don't want to remain at that level. Rather, I am trying to see how these processes may have interfered with one another in the formation of a scientific domain, a political structure, a moral practice. By the way, the scientific domain is often just as polemic as the religious. I mean, what did Galileo speak out about? Astronomy. And the problem he had wasn't so much with the church. It was, of course, with in many ways, but with the church's astronomers who had a completely different way of looking at it. It's like, you will not mess with our math. You should see the mathematical equations, the Ptolemaic universe, galaxy, worldview, whatever, with Earth at the center, and then the sun and the other celestial bodies moving around it. Ptolemy lived during the Roman era, and he had calculated the distance between the Earth and the sun within feet. He's correct. And the calculations are beautiful. I mean, you look at these long equations, and it was excellent. This made sense. It's mathematizable. Well, why don't we go with that anymore? Because through a telescope, we can see that the sun is over there, we're over here, and we're the ones that are moving, not the sun. Okay, so what's the equation for that? Don't have one. It's just the telescope. And that's super interesting. I don't want to return to a Ptolemaic universe. I'm not a flat earther here, but the math was excellent. So Galileo said, we're going to throw out all this math. We are? Wait, it's math. I don't want to throw out the math. You can cling to it. Be careful. All right, it's very interesting. All right. So I love this. These processes, these manners of questioning interfere with one another, but interference in a good way. It disrupts. I can be plodding along on my daily path. This is exactly how it's supposed to go. Everything this way, everything this way, everything this way. If something breaks that up and makes me think again, that's a good thing. We're actually quite connected to Arendt here. All right, up at the top of 51, well, everything 51 and 52 are about problematization. There's two places, if you're doing the problematization topic, honestly, I can't remember whether that's topic A, B, or C. I should have that here. I do. Sorry, it's topic A. If you were considering doing topic A, if you're talking about problematization, there's a kind of definition on 51, and there's a kind of definition on page 52, but there's a dang good one on 52 as well. So whatever strikes you most, there isn't just one that you can choose. I'm presenting possibilities in the field of possibilities between us and the power relation. This is what I'm bringing to the table based on what Foucault said. So we have this, he says a little more than halfway down on 51. Thought is not what inhabits a certain conduct and gives it its meaning. There he's different from Arendt. Rather, thought is what allows one to step back from this way of acting or reacting, to present it to oneself as an object of thought, and to question it as to its meaning, its conditions, and its goals. Thought is freedom in relation to what one does, the motion by which one detaches from it, establishes it as an object, and reflects on it as a problem. There. That's a kinda, I could see that working depending on how you're taking problematization. Like I said, it's not on the Thinker Quiz review sheet because I think it somewhat escapes a precise definition. It's easy to go to the definition of ethics. It's on page 31. And there's a quote. It says it's this. There you go. But I think it's a little more water-weeny when we try to pin him down on this. Look a little bit more over on 52. He says, that's right at halfway down, he says, it is problematization that responds to these difficulties, ... In connection with them, it develops the conditions in which possible responses can be given. It defines the elements that will constitute what the different solutions attempt to respond to. And I think that that is what it's doing and kind of on the edge of defining it. And if that really strikes you, that's a great quote to go to. But last but not least is the rest of that paragraph. I think that kind of for me, I mean, again, this is where I'm seeing it, but it might be different for you. This sort of pinned it down for me. He said, this development of a given into a question. This transformation of a group of obstacles and difficulties into problems to which the diverse solutions will attempt to produce a response. This is what constitutes the point of problematization and the specific work of thought. Great. What I liked about that is probably because I like math. I loved geometry and algebra. And I remember the given in geometry as, here it is, this is necessarily so. Well, that makes sense in a math problem, I guess, whatever. But life isn't a math problem. As beautiful as the Ptolemaic equation may be, life isn't a math problem. That's also a criticism of Augustine. Everything in the universe of space and time, the realm of space and time in the universe, I should say, is mathematizable. That's nice. I can know how far away something is. But the given is just given. I ask questions about the self-evident claim. It isn't just what it is. Changing what is given into a question is what problematization literally is. This is what somebody is bringing to the table. Take it as given that. Oh, why should we take that as given? What is that? What does it mean? What is it like? How is it working? What other ways could it look at it? What is it? Why isn't it this? Problematization. Okay, look at this transformation of a group of obstacles and difficulties into problems. Okay, well, we have to remember that we can't do this. Why can't we do that? Well, it's an obstacle. We have to go around. Why? Why not ask it? That's problematization. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, I love that. I've just lost it. And it's transforming them into problems to which different solutions will attempt to produce a response. This is a good thing. This is what constitutes the point of problematization and the specific work of thought. He's going a little bit beyond Arendt here. Arendt gave no specific directionality to thought. Habit of examining and reflecting on whatever comes to pass, regardless of specific content, quite independent of result. He's like, dang it, it's got a result. Problematization is the result and is where we find meaning. And it's going in a neat way. So, with that said, let's go back to 51. He said, for a long time, I've been trying to see if it will be possible to describe the history of thought, it's just about halfway, as distinct both from the history of ideas and from the history of mentalities. It seemed to me that there was one element that was capable of describing the history of thought. This was what one would call the problems, or more exactly, problematizations. And he said that before. He said, I want to do a history of problematics. I want to see how people looked at what was going on and looked at it as a problem to which different solutions could be offered. And in my current situation, I'd like to see what other solutions other people have. That's great. Awesome. Right down at the bottom of 51. Here, their only role, so to say that the study of thought is the analysis of a freedom does not mean one is dealing with a formal system, okay? So study of thought is the analysis of freedom, okay? How I'm using it, how I could use it. Great. The only role of the social, the economic, the political processes, all of these things, is instigating something, realizing that there's a power relation. Remember when I said, when we go back to, I believe it's page 8 or 9, I should look it up, but it says that freedom is always provoking a response. And I kept saying, we used to do this to my mom. We go, mom, 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 mom. And you probably did that too. And we'll probably drive your mom nuts. Don't do that. Okay. But it's one of those things that mom, that's constantly instigating something, kind of poking it, prodding it, keeping it awake. There's a metaphor that we saw in Arendt's work, referring to Socrates as a gadfly. He referred to himself as a gadfly. A gadfly is a stinging fly. And they would particularly bother horses. And so horses, sleep standing up, and then you see, all of a sudden a horse is like stamping and, swatting with his tail and stuff. Well, the horse is irritated because there's been something stinging him. Okay, it's the gadfly. And a gadfly in a community is someone who's always kind of, rousting up trouble, being a curmudgeon. Socrates was the classical version of a gadfly. Everybody's going along, getting along. Socrates, why do you got to make it a problem? Because it naturally is one. That's what we got to look at. And that's the great thing. So good connection back there to Socrates. These are all things that are just, their only role is instigation. Their only role is to see how your freedom is going to respond to the problem. It's an opportunity. I hate that. Sorry. Okay. I like this. Problem is a good word. You want to know why? Let's look at the top of 52. To one single set of difficulties, several responses can be made. And most of the time, different responses actually are proposed. What must be understood, you could perhaps look at this as a task of philosophy. I will add page 52. Task. Oops, there it is. Okay. What must be understood is what makes them simultaneously possible. It is the point in which their simultaneity is rooted. It is the soil that can nourish them all in their diversity and sometimes in spite of their contradictions. Think about just a very simple problem. What's for lunch? Okay? If we all go to a restaurant and we sit down, at present we can't do that, not even in LA. But let's imagine that we all went out to a restaurant in happier times and whatnot. And the waitress or the waiter brings over the menu and you're taking a look and you're like, well, as a vegetarian, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I'm going to have the bacon that's wrapped in the burger that's wrapped in the bacon that's topped with the cheese. Okay. Oh, there's the vegetarian and there's the meat eater. Who's right? No one. Neither. Both. Why? What are we looking for here? Okay. These are both simultaneously possible. It's totally fine to be a vegetarian, nutritionally speaking. And now we see from keto diets eating a little more meat, perhaps not the fatty hamburger and the massive amounts of bacon and whatnot, but that's got its virtues as well. There's strengths and weaknesses in different positions, and that they can exist at the same time is something that I love, the soil that can nourish them all. Remember we talked about being rooted in the relationship to myself in Arendt. This is being rooted in the idea that, sure, I need to practice my freedom and have a relationship with myself, but I need to consider what's going on here because I have a relationship with the other. In a power relation, the table, what I bring to the table, you have a seat at the table as a subject. What I bring to the table, the back and forth, the idea that there can be different ideas presented. This is not just a table, it's a plot of land where other things can grow. These are problems that grow. Problems aren't bad, okay? There are different approaches and different problems are even going to be seen. It's great. It is the soil that can nourish them all in their diversity and sometimes in spite of their contradictions. Meat eater and vegetarian. Opposite. Oh, let's make the vegetarian a vegan. Really opposite. Okay? Totally fine point of view. Looking at a problem in a different way. Yay, you. Okay? We're not going to cut off those possibilities. I love it. Keeping looking. Look at dead middle of 52. The work of a history of thought would be to rediscover at the root of these diverse solutions the general form of problematization that has made them possible, even in their very opposition, or what has made possible the transformation of the difficulties and obstacles of a practice into a general problem for which one proposes diverse practical solutions. This really connects back to page 15. If we look back, I'm going to go to that because I wrote it down in my discussion notes. If I go back to page 15, he says, like at the bottom, okay, right at the bottom, it's like when Michael Best was kind of waking up, and it's like, it's problematic, something one has to question continually. And we've got Foucault's answer at the bottom. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. And I had a smiley face and everything. Okay. That's exactly it. An exercise of power should never be something self-evident. It can always be questioned. And that's exactly what's going on in a problematic. And that's a great thing. Okay. So it connects to refusal. Again, it connects to the idea that everything is dangerous. And each day has its own problem. So I got to figure out what's dangerous today. What's problematic today? Dangerous wasn't the right word. What's problematic today? Well, and problem is not bad. It's a good word because problems invite solutions and invite me to be careful. I guess this morning I'm leaning a little bit more towards that first definition of curiosity because I keep referencing care. Don't mistake that leaning just because I'm talking about being careful for any sort of preference. Please go with the definition of curiosity that you prefer most genuinely for yourself. Awesome. Down at the bottom, that bottom paragraph on 52, he says, it is clear how far one is from an analysis in terms of deconstruction. Any confusion between these two methods would be unwise. Problematization is not deconstruction. Let's not get into it. That's an entire branch of philosophical inquiry, okay? But it tends to start out by looking at everything as bad. Let's break it down and see where exactly everything went wrong. Instead of everything is a problem. He said everything isn't bad. That's what I brought out at the beginning of our discussion today. Everything isn't bad. If we have power relations all over the place, it's because we have so many different avenues and arenas to take in practicing our freedom or to engage with the practice of our freedom. Great, let's do it. More the merrier. Let's invite others to do so as well. So he says, rather, it is a question of a movement of critical analysis in which one tries to see how the different solutions, not just my way, how the different solutions to a problem have been constructed, but also how these different solutions result from a specific form of problematization. I'm going to have a specific way of looking at things. I'm a philosopher. I'm a Lutheran. I'm a woman. Okay, so you may be a Buddhist gentleman. All right, that's nice. You can have a different way. Let's talk about our different ways of problematizing things, the way that we questioned ideas. That's not bad that we're different. It's good. It's not to use, bad and good. It's thumbs up because it respects the freedom of the other and it opens up new possibilities for new avenues for questioning, etc. He says, going further, but also how these different solutions, I did that. And it then appears that any new solution which might be added to the others would arise from current problematization, modifying only several of the postulates or principles on which one bases the responses that one gives. Might not be immediately obvious on that, but that is exactly what he meant by innovation. If in the power relation, people who are looking at it from different perspectives come together and say, I'm enjoying my chocolate, I'm enjoying my peanut butter and crunch. You got chocolate on my peanut butter, you got peanut butter in my chocolate. Okay, or whatever. And now they have a new thing, a Reese's peanut butter cup, which of course is one of the best of the candies. Okay, that's an innovation. This is a new thing that comes up, and that is a positive. It appears that any new solution which might be added comes from problematization, coming together and bringing those ideas to the table. It allows us to grow something that had never been thought of or imagined. I want to take it in kind of a serious direction because it had a significant impact on us in the philosophy department. One of our one of our colleagues was diagnosed with rather advanced cancer, and his kids were little, and he had 5 kids. One of them was just a baby, and he was a healthy guy. Scott was healthy, ate well, biked around, played with his kids, and here he has a very advanced form of cancer. And when he said, "Okay, well, doctor, what do we do?" And he said, "You spend time with your kids. This is it. You're at the end of your life." And he called his dad, who's an oncologist, and he called his brother, who's an oncologist. And he came down. They came down. They're from Canada. And his dad said he had never actually seen his dad cry. And his dad said, "Son, this is stage 4 cancer. You have cancer everywhere. What can we do? Let's spend time with the kids." And his brother said, I can't see it. There's got to be something." And it happened to be right at the time that City of Hope up in Irwindale was running a trial, one of the very first trials of immunotherapy for treatment of colon cancer. That's what Scott had. And his brother got him into a trial. Do you know how long people were told the body can't fight cancer because it's your own cells? There was some researcher, I do not know who it was, I should probably Google that. Some researcher said, "But what if it could?" No, it can't, but what if it could? It can't, but what if it could? So here's researchers coming to the table and saying, well, we could have the surgical option for cancer, we could have the radiological, we could have the homeopathic, we could have, well, what if we could get the body to fight it? Well, we can't do that. Well, let's keep trying. Let's see if it goes in this direction, whatever. Scott lived 10 more years. 10. His 5-month-old son was in 5th grade when he died, and that is tragic. No kid should lose their father at 10. But he knew who his father was, and he never would have. It was amazing, because there wasn't just one way of looking at it. That's how extreme it can be. There was just one way of looking at it. The oldsters and the elders said, Hutus and Tutsis, they hate each other. We hate them. Oh yeah, great. Neighbor Tutsi, you brought me a beer. That's nice. Thanks. Oh yeah, I'll totally help you out at your farm next week. You're at my farm the week after. Yeah, they're terrible. Remember what Leopold said? We could throw around awful words without awful thoughts. You can? Really? Don't your words say something of your intent and your directionality and your thinking, that it's only going one way? That was the problem. They soaked that up like sponges. And it wasn't a problematic. It wasn't soaking up, well, we need to look at things from different ways. Different strokes for different folks. It was even a TV show. Whatever. If you're wanting to look that up, it's What You Talking About, Willis. Okay? From the 70s and 80s, and I'm old and I get that. But this is just the thing. They presented one view and it got accepted unquestioningly. And the deaths of close to 1 million people as a result. Not obviously in Niarumbuye, but our 10 guys became murderers as a result of this polemic directionality. What if they would have looked at it as a problematization? Alphonse said, seems like there wasn't going to be enough land. Is it Alphonse or Fulgence? Sorry, it's on the left-hand side. I believe it's page 220. I should go get the book, but whatever. And it says, well, there were concerns that, we weren't going to have enough land, and if there were less people here, then there would be more land, and, I could buy this plot of land, and then my kids could stay there, and they don't have to move away. And, all right, if there's tension about that, there isn't just one way of looking at it. Well, if there were less people, let's just get rid of the people. We have a machete, and now we have the propaganda to go with it. So that's ridiculous. It's unacceptable. But it was a polemic, not a problematization. Problematization would have said, let's see how we work on this. What are other options? What about other possibilities? How are we raising this as a question? That's how people work together in a community. And that's how power relations should go. Requires the freedom embraced by you and respected in the other. That brings us to the end of our discussion of Foucault. So I'm going to say something right now about the quiz. As soon as you've watched this video, I'm not going to be, I'll check attendance on it, but I'm not going to be like, oh no, I can't give Fred the quiz because he hasn't watched meeting number 8. Whenever you're ready to take the quiz, you can. Zap me a text. Please keep it between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. And zap me a text and I'll send it over. Same old. Please have your proctor with you. And those that I've mentioned, if you're without a proctor, let's set up a time. You have between now, today is 11/25, and December 2nd. So you have a week to take this quiz. Figuring you can find a moment when someone's around. If you can't, like I said, reach out to me. Or if you'd rather not, maybe your family is having extreme family time and they don't. That sounded weird, but maybe it's family time. Maybe everybody's been somewhere else and everybody's finally home. And that's good. Let family be together. If you want to go into the office and lock the door and take the quiz with me, that's fine. We can Zoom quiz. It's not a big deal. Just reach out and let's schedule a time to do that, please. And then we'll be all set. All right. Well, that's it for me. I'm going to bid you adieu, and we'll talk again soon.